You know you've really made it as a musician when you get the call from SNL. You're also adding to your legend when you spend a night or two behind bars. These SNL musical guests all found themselves on the wrong side of the law. Lauryn Hill was SNL's featured musical guest for a single episode in 1998, although she did reunite with the Fugees' Wyclef Jean to perform for the show's 50th anniversary concert. In 2012, Hill pleaded guilty to federal tax evasion. She'd failed to file tax returns for 5 years and owed money on more than $2.3 million in income. While she pleaded guilty to charges specifically related to 2005 through 2007, the court took into account the 2008 and 2009 tax years as well, in which Hill had also not filed tax returns. She was sentenced to 3 months in prison, followed by 3 months on home arrest and a year of probation. Hill was also ordered to pay a $60,000 fine on top of what she owed to the IRS. During her sentencing, Hill said that she'd initially been unable to pay her taxes on account of quitting the music industry to focus on her family. She explained, "I needed to be able to earn so I could pay my taxes without compromising the health and welfare of my children, and I was being denied that."
The only thing that I could do is serve others.
Snoop Dogg made his SNL debut in 1994 when he was still known as Snoop Doggy Dogg. He appeared as the show's featured musical guest twice more in 1997 and 1999 before coming back to host an episode in 2004.
Say what? That worked! That really worked!
But before Snoop was making a name for himself as a rapper, he was busy getting into trouble with the law. In 1990, he was convicted of felony drug possession and possession for sale for cocaine. 3 years later, he was arrested during a traffic stop when police found a gun in his car. He pleaded guilty to possession of a handgun in 1997 and was sentenced to 3 years probation and community service. Most famously, Snoop was put on trial for first-degree murder after an alleged rival gang member was shot and killed in 1993. He was acquitted in 1996. Over the years, the rapper has been fined several times for misdemeanor drug possession, but in 2006, he was again facing more serious charges. In September, he was detained at John Wayne Airport when security found a collapsible baton in his carry-on. Snoop's lawyer claimed it was a prop, and Snoop was sentenced to probation and community service. And in October, he was arrested at Bob Hope Airport for suspicion of transporting marijuana. Police ended up finding a gun at his home. He was again given probation and community service. R. Kelly was never the featured musical guest on SNL, but in 2013 he did appear alongside Lady Gaga for a performance of their song, Do What You Want. It was, memorable.
There's no need to Google SNL 2013. Lady Gaga featuring R. Kelly.
R. Kelly has a long and terrible history of criminal offenses, beginning with his 1994 marriage to Aaliyah, who was 15 at the time. In 2000, the Chicago Sun-Times began an investigation into allegations that Kelly had abused underage girls. In 2002, he was arrested on charges related to possession of child sexual abuse material, but was acquitted in 2008. The allegations didn't stop, though. In 2019, Lifetime released the 6-part documentary series Surviving R. Kelly, which delved into the musician's alleged abuse. The same year, Kelly was charged with multiple counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse, assault against a minor, and eventually sex trafficking. In 2021, he was found guilty on 8 counts of sex trafficking and 1 count of racketeering. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. He was found guilty of additional charges in 2022 and sentenced to an additional 20 years, although both sentences would mostly be served at the same time. In 2024, Kelly's bid for an appeal was denied. Lil Wayne has been the featured musical guest on SNL 3 times over the years, in 2008, 2010, and 2018. He actually first appeared on the show back in 2004 as part of Destiny's Child's performance of Soldier. He performed another collaboration, this time with DJ Khaled, in 2019 for the song Jealous. Lil Wayne's legal issues started in 2007, when police searched his tour bus at a concert in New York after they allegedly smelled weed coming from it. A .40 caliber gun was found on the bus, which police accused Wayne of trying to conceal. He and his lawyer were adamant it wasn't his. Wayne was arrested, and in 2009 he pleaded guilty to felony gun possession. His sentencing was delayed until 2010 for various reasons, at which point he was sentenced to a year at Rikers. In 2008, Wayne's tour bus was stopped and searched by Border Patrol in Arizona. and he was ultimately charged with 4 felony counts, including drug possession, intent to sell, and firearm possession. He was sentenced to 3 years probation while he was serving his sentence at Rikers. In December 2019, Wayne was again hit with a firearm charge, this time in Florida. Having previously been convicted of a felony, possession of one is illegal. He pleaded guilty in 2020 but was pardoned by Donald Trump before he left office in 2021. At this point, Paul McCartney is pretty much a regular on SNL.
So, how do you think that went?
It's probably the best thing I've ever worked on.
He's been the featured musical guest 4 times over the years, in 1980, 1993, 2010, and 2012. But he's also performed for both the show's 40th anniversary and 50th anniversary specials. McCartney is one of the top-selling and award-winning musicians of all time, and he's generally regarded as a pretty great guy. So what crime could he possibly have committed? The man loved weed. In 1972, he was fined £1,000 by a Swedish court for possession of the drug. He followed that up the following year with an illegal cultivation conviction and a £100 fine after Scottish police discovered he was growing it on his farm. But his most famous brush with the law happened in 1980, when McCartney was scheduled to perform with his band Wings in Japan. When they touched down at Tokyo's Narita International Airport, McCartney was busted for trying to bring in half a pound of marijuana. He insisted the pot was for personal use only, but in Japan, a country with incredibly strict drug laws, the amount was enough to warrant a smuggling charge. Luckily for McCartney, Japanese officials weren't ready to lock up a beloved former Beatle for what could have amounted to years, so he was deported instead. The Rolling Stones made only one appearance on SNL, all the way back for the show's 4th season premiere in 1978. They were booked to do double duty for the gig as both the episode's host and featured musical guest. At the time, series producer Lorne Michaels considered it to be a huge win. Having the Stones on meant Saturday Night Live truly was the coolest thing on TV. The band was well known for their partying, which they apparently brought with them to the studio. According to Saturday Night, a backstage history of Saturday Night Live, they were drinking heavily and doing cocaine openly during their visit to 30 Rock. By the time they performed, Mick Jagger's voice was noticeably raspy, likely due to the band's week-long antics. Of course, SNL wasn't the first time the Rolling Stones made headlines like that. Famously, on February 12, 1967, Sussex police raided a party at Keith Richards' Redlands home on suspicion of probable drug use. Both Richards and Jagger were charged with crimes, Richards for allowing Indian hemp to be smoked at his property, and Jagger for possession of 4 Italian-made amphetamine pills. Richards was sentenced to a year in prison and a £500 fine, while Jagger was sentenced to 3 months in prison and a £100 fine.
Do you think it will have any effect, though?
I don't know, I might get a song out of it.
The rulings caused a public outcry. Eventually, Richards' conviction was overturned for lack of evidence, and Jagger's was changed to a year's probation. Stone Temple Pilots played one time on SNL in 1993. The band performed 2 songs from their album Core, Creep, and Naked Sunday. Lead singer Scott Weiland had a long and well-known history of drug abuse, but it first caught up with him in 1995, when he was arrested for possession of heroin and cocaine and ordered to spend 4 to 6 months in a drug treatment facility. In 1998, he was again arrested for possession of heroin. He pleaded guilty to that charge, but after an overdose in July 1999, he was sentenced to a year in an LA County recovery center for violating his probation. In 2001, Weiland was arrested on domestic violence charges after an argument with his wife got out of hand. He pleaded guilty and agreed to undergo counseling in order to have the charges dismissed. In 2003, he was again arrested on possession charges. He was sentenced to 3 years probation, and the charge was dropped after he completed another drug rehab program. The next year, he received a DUI and was ordered to do a 6-month drug program. In 2008, Weiland was convicted of another DUI and ordered to serve 8 days in jail, as well as complete an alcohol education class and pay nearly $2,000 in fines. Weiland died of an accidental overdose in 2015. Rick James made one appearance on SNL as the show's musical guest in 1981. He and the Stone City Band performed the songs Give It To Me Baby and Super Freak. Like many musicians of the era, James was a heavy and well-known drug user, but he mostly managed to stay out of trouble until 1991. In August of that year, James and his 21-year-old girlfriend, Tanya Hijazi, were arrested for allegedly imprisoning and torturing a 24-year-old woman at James's Hollywood Hills home. Police told the Los Angeles Times at the time that the couple were suspected of assault with a deadly weapon, false imprisonment, forced oral copulation, making terrorist threats, and furnishing narcotics. While out on bail, James and Hijazi were involved in another assault incident, this time at a West Hollywood hotel. The pair were arrested on suspicion of assault with a deadly weapon, false imprisonment, kidnapping, and sale or transportation of narcotics after a separate woman met with them to allegedly discuss James's new recording label. The woman testified in court that James and Hijazi beat her over several hours before allowing her to leave and giving her cab fare.
They threatened me that if I went to the police, they would have me killed.
In 1993, James was convicted of assault, false imprisonment, and furnishing cocaine to the woman at his home, but he was acquitted on the torture charge. He was sentenced to 5 years and 4 months in prison but was released after 2. Hijazi pleaded guilty to 1 count of assault and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Their second victim ultimately won a $2 million civil suit against James and the hotel.